Morning.
Boy, there's a lot of people here.
Yeah. All
You
right.
and you and you.
That's right. All right.
You have a TV in your office,
Yeah. Nice, huh? Very nice.
so
Yeah.
you have to turn around to watch it, though.
Yeah. We're gonna watch some news for the. All right.
Is that new?
The TV.
Yeah.
I think every like little our meeting room they should have like
Oh,
a
I see. Maybe you're in a different spot than you were.
yeah maybe yeah. All right. Okay. Today our topic is gonna talk about like students' mindset, and then also about parents. And so I got some interesting things like I could talk about because I was like yesterday I kind of was like I did an interview with some of my colleagues about how what was students mindset, and then also so here we go guys. And first of all, in Chinese culture I believe that teachers are respected in China because they we learn the Confucius theory thing, and then so there is a great example that I remember when I was still in I think was in elementary school at that point, and what happened was I remember was every class um when teacher arrived to the classroom on the front, and then the class leader it will say stand up, and then the rest of the classmate students will stand up, and and then teacher will reply say to say hello, and then the student will say, hello teacher, and then the teacher reply back to hi student, and then they say please sit down. Then all the student will sit down, and the teacher will say let's start. And that's how I remember it was like that. And my question for you guys will be, do this happen in like American classroom or English classroom?
Yeah. Well, Indonesian classrooms. It's actually there's some formality. It's kind of interesting. There's a duality here that there, uh, there's part of the society is extremely structured and um, uh, and this comes from the government on down.
Hmm.
Uniforms, all government agencies or offices are uniforms, regardless. Okay, and they all do exercises in the morning. Now,
Oh,
I bet my guess is a lot of this is a reflection of China. A lot of culture here is somewhat a reflection of Chinese culture.
yeah, that's a good point because I
Um,
think
in At
yeah.
school, we always had a flag ceremony in the morning. Now we were a national plus private school, so that
Uh,
means we had a national curriculum plus other subjects that were not taught in the national curriculum. And I take that back. The flag ceremony was not every morning; it was on Mondays and Fridays. At the beginning of the week and at the end of the week, they'd have a flag ceremony. Now,
wow.
but the kids all wore uniforms, and part of this trend of organization and stuff went into the schoolroom where there was a leader of the class who was, I guess he was elected by the students. I never had anything to do with picking him, but I was not homeroom, so I don't know how exactly what the process was like. But that kid, just like in the Chinese schools, he was responsible for attendance, and his responsibility for attendance was, especially the girls were good at this. They give me the book, the attendance book,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, fill this out. They tell me, make sure you fill this out. Teacher, you have to do attendance, and because they had to give it back to the office and it had to be filled out. So, kind of Ottoman, a lot of tasks are kind of like Ottoman Empire style. There's a division of labor, and but they would come in and greet me, and because it's an Islamic society, they'd have this Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, and then that welcome, teacher, and it was all very formal, and there was a lot of respect conveyed in that moment, which I enjoyed. Of course, after that moment ended, the respect ended. So we went back to being seventh grade.
Wow.
But yeah, now I can't speak the U.S. other than my experience, which was a long time ago, which was quite contra to all that. Very relaxed. I think teachers have lost. In general, there's a lot of control that has been given up. Right? You can't do that to me. I'll call the police.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, we used to get SWATs. The teachers have a board, a paddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. We had that like a bamboo ruler or something. I remember.
Yeah. Well, they give us SWATs across our rear end if we broke some infraction, quote unquote. And we just didn't think anything of it. It didn't really hurt. The kids all thought it was somewhat of a joke. I don't think you can do that anymore. I don't think there's any kind of corporal punishment allowed any longer, right?
You can't do that in the United States.
Right.
Yeah. What about from the United States perspective? Do they have like a little greeting thing in the beginning for every class?
Grading?
Like greeting.
Oh, greeting.
Hi,
Oh,
teachers,
yes.
like,
Well,
down,
things are totally
that.
different now, but back, I won't know how old I am, but back when I was a young girl, we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Do you remember that, Darcy? We had to say, I pledge allegiance to the flag, blah, 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 blah. We had to pledge allegiance and we prayer. That was the norm every single day.
Where did you grow up?
In North Carolina.
Okay.
So we had to do a pledge of allegiance.
South of the Mason-Dixon line, right?
I'm in Wilson, Raleigh area.
But that's south of the Mason-Dixon. I mean, that's the South, right?
Yes, that's the South. Yes, I guess you could call it.
I don't remember a prayer when I was in school, but it possible I wasn't paying that close of attention. I mean, certainly the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance and prayer.
But I don't remember prayer in our school. But
again, they've taken that all out now. You can't pray in school anymore. They removed that.
Well, like
what we do is called now a moment of silence. They do that now versus the whole prayer thing, and then their Pledge of Allegiance. And a lot of the schools have removed that.
They've removed the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah, a lot of the American schools, they don't do that anymore. Kids don't even know what that is. Yeah, that's been removed, and there's been some other cultural things that's been removed. But I think that's why our schools are so violent now, because they don't have any type of something. They need something. Obviously, whatever we're doing is not working.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, they removed it.
Because I was sixth grade when I was US, and then I think I had to do like a moment of silence.
Yeah,
and it was like a culture shock for me when I was there the first time. I was like, "What is going on?" People were just like so quiet that thing. I was like, I don't know what I do. What is this? So eventually I asked them like, what is this thing? And then so they told me about it, and then said, oh, okay. So the next one like a moment silent, and so I just like go with the flow, and then it was like, oh, okay, I was like that, yeah, it was really
Well, we
really
do that, Jerry,
interesting.
because we have some religions now. But back in the
Yeah,
day, there really was just one or two religions. It was Christianity and whatever else. There was
right.
nothing else. But now we have Hindu, we have, all kinds of cultures
Mm-hmm.
today have their own faith. So you had to switch from that to a silence because, everybody have their,
Mm-hmm.
thing doing things. So
Wow, that's cool. Yeah. Well, also I have another one to share with you guys. Is I think when I was still in school in China, that like for me myself I was like into afraid to answer the questions like without the like teacher asking it. And then because why have this mindset back then? Because they think if I answer this, I might say it wrong, and then if we have, it might losing face like a Chinese culture thing, and then yeah, and then I think, do you guys have this thing like the? I was really like curious about when you guys started teaching the class. Did the students say it right away, or just if you ask them, they will say it like for the answer and stuff?
Well, I think human nature is that everybody's, a little bit, shy to, to be the first.
Mhm.
I always make the analogy of if you ever go dancing, nobody wants to be the first person on the dance floor.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
but once that first person goes out there, everybody follows,
Yeah,
right?
that's kind of true.
Why is
Yeah.
that? You know, and I always it didn't bother me because like girls would or not. I didn't. They weren't really girls when I learned to dance, but ladies would say, "Well, everybody will be looking at me." I says, "No, they won't. They'll be looking at me. So come on, let's go."
Yeah.
And it's silly because that's the big that's the big caveat of being in a corporate culture is that it's very difficult for corporations to be innovative and to go forward because nobody wants to make a mistake. In a smaller entrepreneurial company, it's okay to make a mistake because you're going into uncharted territories, and it's impossible to go forward without making mistakes. It's just not possible. Yeah.
Right.
that is
Now,
so
I
true,
have been.
Darcy.
What's
That is
that?
so true. That is so true because I've been in the corporate world for like 30 plus years, and I've worked in every environment you possibly could think of. And that means mom and pop organizations, the large organizations, the small organizations, yeah. And one of the problems with corporate America is that we have a leadership issue. People do not want to admit that they don't know everything and that you are human and I don't know, I don't have the answer to this. I made a mistake. They don't want to admit that. So they pretend they know the answer and then you take
Well,
down your
that's
whole team
that's
go down with you.
that's just like children that we teach now. They don't want to admit they don't have the answer.
Yeah.
Um, and I always tell kids, especially in IELTS, which is kind of a different setting than the normal lessons. But I always say, look, this is where we practice. We're here to make all the mistakes you can, so you get them out of the way, so you don't make a mistake when you have your IELTS exam. So it's okay to make a mistake. I don't care. I expect you to. And I even tell my younger students that it's all right to make an error. See, I'm sure that it's very punitive in their educational system in China that mistakes are just not tolerated,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, it's really like really
Hmm.
strict in the Chinese culture. Like if
Right.
you,
So they're very deathly afraid of that.
yeah,
And I try to take that fear out of the equation so they can practice. I mean, these kids cannot they can't say the word right, so they just don't say anything at all.
Right.
Right?
Right.
yeah,
Right.
And that's very counterproductive, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very counterproductive for learning. I mean, the only way you can learn is by making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's if they didn't make a mistake, there wouldn't be any reason for them to take the class.
Right. Yeah. Because in Chinese culture, we have this face thing, like color means like your face,
Mm.
Right.
like that. And then they think that, oh, if I say something wrong in front of teacher, I will
Well,
lose my face. And
yeah,
then the parents like behind them, right? And they were like, sometimes they observe the class.
oh, they're
And
more than observing the class, Jerry. I mean,
what,
if
really?
if a child tries to pronounce a word
Uh-huh.
and they do it wrong, before that syllable is up, the parent is in there telling them what to say, and
Wow.
usually they're not correct either, right, Mary? And
Yay.
and just yell at them. I mean, it's intimidating the way they do it, and it's no wonder these kids are frozen. They're literally
Yeah.
frozen with fear that they're not going to do it right, so they don't do anything at all. So having a parent like that next to a child that's trying to learn something. Now, I'm sure Mary's had the experience when these parents leave, the child's complete aura, the complete disposition changes. They
Correct.
become a different
Yeah,
child.
like when I think when they're in front of the parents, they have to be like super listen to them, because there's another Chinese culture perspective is that I say kids are respect to the elders, like their
Yes.
parents,
Yes.
grandparents, uncles,
Yeah.
auntie. So for me is that when I was in front of my grandparents, so I was like yes, yes, yes. There's like a no.
Mhm.
There's no, no, no,
Mhm.
no, no. So whatever. Let's say I'll do this. Go wash the dishes. I'll go wash the dishes. It's no like, it's like a order thing to me. Say
Mhm.
Yeah,
if I do this job done, I respect them, kind of like that.
and unfortunately, in our situation, because of the immediacy of the proximity to the parent's opinion actually weighs more than ours, whether the
Mhm.
parent is correct or not. The children will follow the parent's lead,
Yeah,
not the teacher's lead,
yeah,
because
I remember
there's
that.
there's more negative consequences about not pleasing the parent as opposed to not pleasing the teacher.
Yeah.
Teachers, we're abstract, we're removed, we're just a box on the screen where, I mean, I've had parents hit their kids in front of the camera.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, just cuff them up the side of the head, whap, just some little girl, her dad just whap, And
Yeah.
this girl was just absolutely, she was quite nice and pretty conversive and not a bad student when the dad wasn't there. But when he came in the room, she just completely shut down. It was really sad, and unfortunately, we were trying to coach her for a middle school private school interview
Hmm.
in Shanghai. She was going from grade 6 to grade 7 in the middle school,
Hmm.
and she was just you know, completely intimidated by her father, who was an absolute tyrant. And just if she paused, she's maybe an A1 speaker, I suppose, maybe borderline A2. She paused for vocabulary. He'd just be shouting the word at her and stuff, and it would just drive her inside even more. It was really sad,
Yeah, like for me, if I do something like perform in front of my parents, I'll be super like
well,
I
everybody is.
have this like anxiety. I was like, oh my god, I'm so stressed out right now. I don't know what to do. Sometimes I'll like shaking a little
Aw.
bit, Yeah, and that's another great example I remember is how I remember I was training for the badminton back then, and then I went to the badminton academy for training, right? And then eventually my parents will take me like to the training facility, and then when I was during the training, my parents would sit down on the side of the bench, and then so this coach start doing all the drill and stuff. But the thing is, my dad he will comment. He said, "This is not the right move. This is not the right way to hit it." So the coach got really really mad. So he talked to my dad. Was like, are you gonna coach your son, or I'm the coach? So I was like, dang, And then what happened was that the coach that made a rule about during the training session, there's no parents allowed in the facility. So it was like a change thing, so that so the coach can super focus on me or on all my teammates for the badminton tournaments coming up. Yeah. I think that was kind of like what it's kind of like a saying what Darcy said about if the student trying to learn something, but their parents came in, and and then I think it's like if you let the students alone, it'll be more the learning process will be easier. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It becomes more of a relaxed atmosphere. Like
Yeah.
I can, from the GC group to the one-on-one. Now I only
Right.
have experienced one, Jerry. I only experienced one Tiger Mom. The length that I've been here, I only had
Tiger.
one, and that was recently. And I was like, okay, this is what a Tiger Mom looks like. But she was very, very. She drilled her daughter. She was on it, and I was like, oh. So I just kind of pushed back and just allow her to do her thing, you know what I mean, without offending her. So I just pushed back, allow her to do it, and I just flowed with it. I just said, that's her mom, you know what I mean? So that's how I took it.
Yeah. Hello?
And it didn't interrupt me from teaching the class, you know what I mean? I just went ahead, whatever, and allow her to drill her daughter, if you will. And then once she finished drilling, I would, because there was only 2 people in the GC class anyway, I would go back to Frank, and I would say, Frank, I said, now it's your turn. And then I would go back to her. When I would go back to the daughter, Tiffany, the mother would do it again. Guess what? I'd let the mother do it. And then when she finished, I would say, Frank, it's your turn. I just go back and forth like that.
Wow.
And so next week, we'll see if she will be there, or if she will, go away. And we'll see how that go. But that was my first experience with a Tiger Mom in a group setting. Because usually in my group settings, the moms are nowhere can be found. The dads are not around. If they are, they're sitting on the sidelines. And I probably, trust me by now, because I've had some of these groups for a while. And I never see the parents. Never. Only new, very new, you might see them for a little bit, and then once they see, oh, she's in good hand or he's in good hand, they disappear. They're gone.
Yeah, I think that's one of them. Like that's like a super Chinese culture thing. Like if for example, like if they're new for the class, they want to make sure teacher are are doing their thing, and then they'll kind of watch it for a little bit. They'll say, okay, it's nothing crazy going on, and they will just go do their thing for the parents. It's like a little a culture thing. Yeah.
I do mostly FT group. I do sub on regular group, but just FT group. And I noticed, like Mary says, the parents are not as obvious in group. But when you ask kids questions, and their immediate thing is they look over like this.
Yeah, they do.
With their mouth open, like, what do I say, Mom?
Yeah. Yeah,
but they're not. But the moms are not interrupting, and they're not kind of overwhelming the landscape.
Yeah. And also, there's another one is, one of the things I catch was, for students in China, we tend to say teacher a lot, and then say teacher this, teacher that, and then say teacher Darcy or teacher Mary. And this is how I remember how I learned it too. We call teacher 老师, So it's in morning. So what I was talking about, like 老师好, it's like good morning, teacher. And I'm in America, and then I remember it was like we call like a miss or missus. Yeah, and I remember that, and then because I want to share with you guys why we call teacher, because it was in the Chinese culture perspective. If you call the teacher the full name, they think that there's no respect at all. That's a
Wow.
really like a Chinese culture perspective from the teaching part. So I remember when I was in the Chinese class, I never called the teacher full name at all. If you call a full name, that means you get a detention, like
Wow.
clearly. Yeah,
Wow.
and that's really interesting how in America, like like I remember they were calling not teacher, like for example, I have a one called Miss Pat, and they were like what so I was like, why did they not call it teacher Pat, like teacher Pat, but it's instead of Miss Pat, or I was like, hey, that's really super like a culture shock for me. I remember, yeah, and
Well, we need to
yeah,
get back to that in America for
yeah,
real. Our teachers don't have the respect that that your culture, and I immediately, because I'm a teacher in
right,
America along with being a teacher for 5-1 Talk, but the teachers in America do not get the reverence that we get
I
with 5-1 Talk.
I believe that starts with dress, Mary.
I
I
agree.
think I think the teachers are far too casual in their approach to
I
school.
agree.
When the teachers look like the kids, when they come in as in tennis shoes and blue jeans, and I don't know what the codes are, but when I've seen teachers, in settings when I was a kid, teachers wore suits. I mean, period. You knew who the teachers were because they had a suit on. And boy, that's scary when you're a fourth grader, right?
Yeah.
And if you look back at American history, up until after the Vietnam War, dress was a class
Oh
eliminator.
yes,
It was a
absolutely, absolutely.
eliminator. You knew who the adults were. You knew who the children were. But then, what track suits, leisure suits. Leisure suits are destroying America, right?
Yep.
When you have grandpas, when you have grandfathers and grandmothers dressing like toddlers.
yeah.
I sound like Archie Bunker.
No, it's true. I mean, it's really a problem in America, and like you said, attire has a lot to do with it, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't see the value of teaching the next generation, and so we got a lot of kids who can't read, can't write, in jail. All
Yeah,
kinds of
like a
crazy
lot of
stuff
juvie.
going on
Well,
right now. Yeah, a lot of juvenile detention
Yeah.
centers, and back in the day, Jerry, we didn't have that. I mean,
Really?
we had a village that raised our kids. No, there was no
Wow.
such thing as juvenile home. What was that? And a village, the whole neighborhood raised 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 children, and there weren't any kids. If your parents died or your uncle died or somebody, the kids went to other family members, raised them. There was no kid going to jail or juvenile hall or anything like that. That's a new culture. It is definitely within the past like 25 years. That's new. This is all new.
Well, there was a thing on Facebook which was kind of interesting about back, like when we were kids. It literally, you could drive a pickup to high school with shotguns and hunting rifles, long rifles, on a
Right.
gun rack in the back of your car, and park it in the school parking lot, and there would be it
And
was
nobody bothered it.
not a
No,
problem. No,
no.
in fact, the teachers would talk to the kids about their guns. They'd share, stories. So, you hear?
Yeah, I think I got kicked out or logged
Well,
out.
you're gonna get written up.
Oh no. Yeah.
You're gonna have
Um.
a coach will be contacting you on Wednesday, possibly, unless they
Oh no.
cancel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um.
address when I taught here, the school was run in cooperation with this um, uh, uh, organization in Turkey, which was very science based, a lot of science, and they made us wear these stupid lab coats, these white lab coats, and you look kind of like you know, who was who was the guy on TV? I don't know, as a kid. Um, there's a kind of a science teacher type, right?
Oh, Bill
And
Nye the Science Guy.
well, this was the guy way before Bill Nye the
Oh,
Science
okay.
Guy. I can't remember his
Right.
name. But anyhow, Bill Nye's actually from Seattle,
Wow.
and I basically didn't want to wear it, so I wore a suit. And there was another American guy there that we were the token native speakers amongst all these guys, which Turkish men are very macho. They're very cliquey. And we were clearly on the outside, not invited to anything, including conversations or teacher lounge.
Wow.
But we wore suits, and Tim goes, "Well, that's cool. Let's wear suits." So we wore suits, and I just did it because I like to dress up. It was a horrible drive, and I just felt better about everything by putting a suit on. So I'd been in a factory for a long time, and you don't need a suit in a factory at all. Not in my factory, anyhow. So
Wow.
if I put a suit on, it meant I was having to go talk to the government.
Wow. Well, that's good. And also, there's one thing I remember it was like a culture thing, like a from Chinese perspective, is whenever I remember is when teacher says, "Can I see your parents?" That means trouble.
Yeah.
China. Yeah. And then, because I had that one, I remember I had experience before, and then I was doing some bad stuff at school in China, and then I got caught, and then teacher just literally just like called me like literally dragged me to the office, and then he's like, I think I need to see your parents real quick, and then so they called and then just like, and then my mom was at home, and then my mom just like after like an hour, my mom showed up in the office, and
After an
and
hour
I was
crying,
there
after
too.
an hour crying,
Yeah, and then I was like, so my parent like my teacher like discussed about like the thing what I did. I was like doing some like like trying to pick up the flower like the fruit thing from the tree, and then I wasn't can't do that because it was the school property, just something like that. It was like a yeah, and so my parents got there. It was like, he said, Jerry, why do you do this? This is so bad. It's Lucifer's face. It's
now
like
we're
a
gonna have to
Chinese
take you
tone.
to America
Yeah.
for school.
Exactly. And I was like, start crying and said, I'm sorry. I did not do that.
Now you have to
And,
go to Missouri.
yeah.
You have to be in Missouri now.
Exactly. And yeah, it was like a real huge thing. Like when teachers say it, like, can I see your parents? That means students did something super horrible. And I was wondering that do the America's teachers say like, can I see your parents? That means trouble as well.
Oh, it's
Would
the
that be a
same
trouble
reaction.
too? The same reaction.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was that way,
Yeah.
Jerry. But nowadays, no.
But-
The kids run the school nowadays in public schools. They're probably like that in the private school, right, Darcy? They're probably that way in the private school, but in the public school,
Yeah.
nada. The kids run the schools in the public schools, man.
So they don't care. They don't. Well, unfortunately, in a lot of parents in a lot of families. The parents just don't care. You know, the difference between the reason why you were so worried about your parents going to school was because your parents care a lot about the way you behave, right?
Yeah,
From what
character
I,
is a big deal around my
you know,
house.
like again, living in Indonesia, my wife is Indonesian, right?
Hmm.
And the word for people is orang, and the word for crazy is gila, right? And we we watch Cops, you know. She says, "Itu orang Amerika gila, yeah." So it's just American people are crazy, right? And unfortunately, you're going to get very little support, parental support, if your kid does something in school from a parent. Is that correct, Mary?
That's
Especially in the
correct.
inner
Hmm.
cities.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
there,
because I
it's
used to work at Baltimore. I don't know if you guys remember
oh,
Baltimore, but
Baltimore. There's a lovely
I
city.
actually was working at a Boys and Girl Club a couple years ago, and it was a culture shock for me. It really was. I had never seen anything like it in my life. It
That's a
took me.
that's a tough city, right?
It was really. I mean, listen. Baltimore has some parts of it is just absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. But then, like any city in America, you have the inner city, and that part of the city where I was with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and I just fell in love with the kids. But I tell you, to just see them was heartbreaking. How they lived, what they were going through, and then their parents, who were a lot of them were very, very young, and then where they live was just, and it was just, I tell you, it was just amazing. They had a graveyard and a little boys and girl club and a school, and that's where the people live. So they lived there, they died there, and they just put you right across the street because that's where the graveyard was, and it was just full. And then of course you had the boys and girl club, like right there. So that's the culture. That's not the entire city of Baltimore, but that's part of their history and culture. Is there's a part that's really bad, really, really bad. And I'm not there anymore, but I often think about the kids. You know what I mean? So I do miss the kids, and it's yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's kind of like I'm sure looking at those kids there, kind of like the kids here. It's like um, what's the saying in the Bible? There for the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
There's I've met a lot of people here that could have such a different life if they had had different opportunities.
Right.
You know, like I had a kid that works for me in my shop, and he was a carpenter. We made furniture, and this guy was smart. I mean, three-dimensionally, he could make a jig, for making stuff. Just, I mean, I really liked talking to him because he was so smart. He could have been an engineer, no question about it.
Mm.
If he had been born into a different situation. Whereas like these kids that Mary talk about being born into this neighborhood, their fate is somewhat sealed,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe not sealed, but it's certainly
Almost. Yeah.
limited. Their
Mhm.
fate is much different than the fate of a kid that was born on the other side of the tracks in Baltimore in the really good part, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's somewhat heartbreaking, like I've had mothers try to get me to hire their eighth grade daughters to work in the factory and stuff, and I said absolutely not. I will not do it. I says I will pay you the wage she would make here if she worked, but the contract is that she stays in school.
That's good.
And I did that. Of course, they get pregnant within about 8 hours of them graduated from high school.
Mm.
And well, which is several months later than most girls in America, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was
Also,
shocked. I was shocked to read on Facebook how many girls in my class and the class behind me were actually pregnant when they graduated from high school. And I was going, my
Wow.
God,
Yeah.
small towns, there's nothing else to do. My wife's sister was a grandmother by the time she was 34.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's Iowa, or no, yeah, Iowa? No, Michigan. I guess it was Michigan Dairy Farm. You know, Baptists, you know.
So the luxury of America is you have the private school and you have the public school. So there is a way out. And then secondly, the program that the company that I was working for, we brought in STEM to the kids. So there's some of the boys and a couple of the girls had a way out. So through that program, STEM, we nurtured them and we mentored them, and a lot of them kind of got into some special schools. But unless they really, because it's a very strenuous process, unless they can apply themselves like that, which a lot of them can't, there were a few boys that and a couple of girls who actually were able to grab a hold of this opportunity to go to a better school. But you have to have a very, very set life. You can't just be able to just, run the street and then just think you're going to get in. No, those kids were really disciplined and they wanted out bad. And those were the kids that were able to make it out. Yeah.
Yeah, we were a big STEM school.
Yeah. STEM.
And Olympiad, was it
Yes,
math
yes.
Olympiad?
Yes.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was all kind of the influence of the Turkish mindset, because they were all very, very technical and stuff. The money that was spent on the school for technology was actually pretty impressive. Electronic whiteboards and overhead projectors, and the teachers moved around from class to class, except for the lab guys, which I was a little bit envious of the lab guys, because they had their labs were just like home, they were they had everything, where they wanted it and stuff, and they came in and it was their space and nobody else's. We were schlepping around, shoving books in our backpack and going to the next class, right? Which makes more sense to move the teachers than the kids. But yeah, but I would say, I've seen some of these open, what do they call them, open class, where the teacher talks to 30 or 40 kids.
Yeah, open class.
Yeah, I've seen more and more of this on YouTube and stuff like that. More, there's some 80,000 schools, so there's certainly lots of opportunity to do this in China. And I'm quite impressed with the organization of the classroom, seeing the classroom itself, and seeing how absolutely disciplined the children are. Extremely disciplined, which only could be if one teacher is in charge of 40 plus kids. You'd have to have discipline or it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Right, Mary?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And discipline and respect.
Yeah.
Discipline and respect.
Or fear, whichever way you want to go.
Yeah.
Would you rather be respected or feared? Well, that was a line in Goodfellas or something. Yeah.
Also, there's one more thing from the parents' expectation is for the student is that the parents tend to want the kid, for competitive. That's why they sign up for the 5-1-talk, the Howells, and then violin lessons, art lessons, calligraphy lessons, so they can go to show their other kids, and then so they can have a little competition going on. And they think that if this my kid, got this learns violin and got a first chair, So they want to, like, the parents' friend also is a friend of, their friends, and they want, so that parents also want the kid to do the same thing and want to be like super competitive. And this is like a Chinese thing. I think it's a Chinese culture thing. And then, cause I have my cousin. He played badminton too. Back then, he was when he was little, and I was we're like 10 years apart. And then, so we're on the same team, right? And back then, I was the one. I win the shots. I was the court. I was at the court everywhere. But now, since he now's in high school, he's like always trying to, like, we play. And I'm kind of like losing the match between with him. That's like a real, like a competitive thing in China.
Is it too late for you to turn pro, Jerry?
Yeah, well, I was there. I was at the academy for like 3 years,
But
and I moved
but couldn't
to
you still
America,
turn
but
pro? Isn't it? It's not too late to turn pro, is it?
I think still is kind of late. I asked them, can I get a certificate for this? Because I know you're too old for this. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was like, okay, I gotta make my own one then, right? Yeah. Yeah, that was really
Well,
like
there's
yeah.
a trend. Trends are like pendulums. They go to the left and to the right. And there was a trend about overbooking your children. I mean, I can remember as when my kids were younger, that there's a philosophy: if you keep your kids too busy, they can't get in trouble because they don't have any time.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that. Okay, but there's also truth to the fact that when they get through this period of being over busy, they're just going to shut down and they're going to swing the other way 180 degrees. They're going to be not particularly useful. And there is possibly some of that. Mary can probably speak to some of that. As parents that were overbooked as children, they're probably maybe going to rebel and not book their kids. Now China's a little bit different because it's the competition is so great. China, and there's very little social support systems like unemployment, welfare. What else is there? Job. I don't know what else is. Mary, there's lots of ways you can make money without doing anything.
Even the students, they're having like summer breaks, for example, right? They still have to do the summer break homeworks.
Right.
It's like for Chinese and math and English. And I was like, that was like, I was asking my cousins like, why are you doing this, dude? You're on break, right? I said, no, even though I'm on break, I still have to do this every day. It's like nonstop. And then, so I told him my experience when I was in the U.S. Like, I don't have any like homework starting the summer, and I'm off. I have to go travel and stuff. Like he was like, yeah, I think, yeah. Yeah. And then so I was like, wow. And he was like, wow, that's cool. And then so whatever during the summer, that even though like me and my cousin go travel around China, but he still had to bring his like homework for us. And I was just like, man, that's kind of sad. Yeah. And also from I think from parents' expectation for students, I think is like I think parents have a little bit lacks of encouragement for the students. Instead of they encourage them, they want to let them feel challenged. And what I'm trying to say is this one example, like what my parents did back then is there's one time during exam and I scored an 80 on exam, and my parents always will compare to other students, my friend was like, hey, the other, Frank scored like a 90, how you gonna score the 80? So what you gonna do next time? Study harder for you. So it's like always like when I do this, it's like tell me study harder, study harder, and then I was like, I cannot handle all this stuff. And then also there's one time that I made like a 60 on like an exam, and so I showed the report, the exam report thing, and my dad just literally throw a dictionary on me. Study, I was like, ow. So I was seeing stars, like I so dizzy. Yeah, he's like, study, Jerry, study, and then like a dictionary. Yeah, it was like a big one, like that like a textbook style, like throw it on me. Yeah, it's like I was like, it's not like that's. I think it's not gonna work. Like trying to inject the knowledge through physical books. To, yeah, and then that's one of the example I remember. And
So,
do you guys like for America? Do they like compare to like a student like
Oh
So,
to
yeah.
others?
Jerry, you're so
Yeah.
bad you have to go to America to go to school.
Oh my God, Darcy.
So that was your punishment, huh, dear? You coming to America?
Yeah,
School?
yeah. Also, I kind of like escaped it. The Gao Kao, which is like the Chinese like lifetime like one thing is like for the Gao Kao is it's like a test. It's way harder I think for like ACT or SAT. The Gao Kao is like a one for lifetime, and
Mm.
then you have to study super hard and you aim for this university, and then if you didn't make it, you had to wait for another like next year to do this Gaokao again.
Mm.
And it was really big thing, and that's especially when you in high school, the last year of high school, and then you have to hit the target that for the which university you want to attend.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah, I think for I kind of asked my colleagues around here as what is like the most thing that teacher can do for the students, and as in, so they say it was teachers' encouragement for the students are
Mhm.
like the important thing
Mm.
for them. So if you guys can like encourage, hey, good job, like they will like go
Mhm.
learn more and have fun. It could because on the other side, the parents like that for me,
Mhm.
do like throw a dictionary every
But
day, for
I
them.
like the word nurture as
Yeah.
much as encouraging because I don't think these kids get a lot of nurturing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of a separation between kids and adults and stuff, and
Right.
some of these kids are, need a hug, really. Um,
Well,
Yeah.
I have become a mentor to a lot of my group classes because for some reason I get a lot of girls, and that's because I have raised I only have one biological daughter from my marriage, but I have mentored and raised a lot of girls who are not my blood. So girls have a tendency to attach themselves to me. So anyway, in the GC classes, there's one
Hmm.
particular group I have where we have really bonded. I mean, really, really bonded, and they do the work, you know what I mean? But after the class is over,
Yeah.
um, they want to sit around and chat, and we're not talking about anything, but we're just playing music, and they may ask me
Hmm.
a question or two, but a lot of times they're doing their homework. So I didn't see
Yeah.
anything wrong with it. So you know what I do, Jerry? I sit with them for another 10
Yeah.
or 7 minutes, 17 minutes, and just, even if we're not even talking, just sit with them. And then they occasionally
Yeah.
ask me a question, and so I think I've become like a mentor to them, and it's really good to, um, uh, through airways, if you will, to be able
Hmm.
to help these girls and nurture them. And I'm always available if they need to ask me something. But yeah, it goes deeper than just the classroom.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I was at school with Tim, um, it's to, for these kids to be able to talk to an adult like a friend, like a peer, to be able to confide is a big deal. Um, they actually like you, and my goal, if the child doesn't like you, you might as well not be there because
Exactly.
they're not going to
Exactly.
get anything from you.
Hmm.
Exactly.
So, um, try to talk to them as they're, like children are way smarter than people think they are. Okay, and to talk down to a little kid is actually the wrong thing to do. I mean, you talk to a kid like he's got a brain, and they will respond to you like they got a brain, right? If you talk down to a child like they have no choice, they have no say whatsoever, they're going to act like a person that with no choice, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure Mary talked to these people on a peer level to ask them what they like, and I think this is quite a different experience for a Chinese child as opposed to their parents. And I don't know what age these kids are that you're talking to, Mary, but the whole idea of, say, like from 12 years on,
About 12.
yeah, I mean, that's just the beginning of emancipation. I mean, the reason why children don't like, or the reason why parents don't like adolescence is because the child is becoming who they are. They're becoming a separate individual other than being a child of the parent. And controlling parents that need to control their kids have a horrible time with adolescence, because it's kind of like building a sandcastle in the waves. The independence and the growing of that child's personality is going to win out over the parents' desire to control them. Can't do it. But if you can cherish that time and nurture and grow that time, that kid will grow into being a great adult. I think adolescence is the most, I like 3-year-olds and I like teenagers. Because those are both incredibly interesting times in a kid's life. Why?
I tell you, I love mentoring girls.
Why?
Just talking to them and stuff. So,
Yeah.
I figured I figured it's my own time. I'm not being paid for that. They're just playing music and relaxing. They'll say, "Teacher," and they'll ask me a question every now and then they'll say, "Well, teacher," but most of the time we're just sitting there quiet. They're playing their music and I'm sitting there doing other things. And when it's time for my next class, I say, "Okay, girls, I gotta go. I got another class. I see you on Wednesday or Friday." And they say, "Okay, teacher." And we exit, and I think they may stay a couple more minutes after me, but then I leave. But that's the only class I do that for, and that's because I've had this class for a long time, and so the girls and I've had kind of sort of bonding. And two of the girls in the class I've had before.
I think whenever you doing that one, it's like build like a bonding between the teacher and the student, and then I think is when they have the moment of like that, they feel like relaxed, also feel warmed. Because the teacher is right there. It's like, and then they have a question, they can just you can answer it, stuff like that. I
And it
think
goes
it's
back to what
really,
you said, Jerry and Darcy, about when they feel like they don't have to have all the answers, they can make a mistake and they're vulnerable. That's when you can really teach, is when they're vulnerable and their guards are down.
I think, that's when the time that they feel like really comfortable. That's what too. Because the students, like, they have all this schoolworks already at school, they want to have a little time for relax, and then this is a really good one. All right, guys, thank you for coming for the Chinese culture.
That was great. Some good questions.
And
thank you
for Mary. And I will see you guys for the next Thursday. And by the way, next Thursday is the International Children's Day. And then if you guys log in on Facebook for the community page, we are doing like a collage picture project day. If you guys can submit the picture, and then
I sent mine in, Jerry. I sent mine in.
Okay, I'd like everybody to give Jerry a big round of applause.
Very good.
Thank
Jerry.
you.
Good question. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.